Hello, readers and writers. I am Anthony L. Manna, also known as Professor Grandpa Tonio, the book guy and the writing guy. Welcome to Writers on Writing, my podcast series of conversations with great authors. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Maggie Grinnell, a writer dedicated to publishing entertaining and heartfelt stories. Here's what Maggie Grinnell wrote about herself on her website, and I'm quoting here. I started writing in 1992. I loved to create lists, and from those lists came stories. My favorite things to do besides writing is to go to the movies, read a good book, visit Disneyland. Yes, I am still a kid at heart, and listen to music, something I can dance to. And that's the end of the quote. Maggie gets her ideas and inspiration from both childhood and life experiences. She enjoys writing picture books and poetry. About herself, she has written, and I'm quoting here, writing is a part of me. Writing is my heart and soul. Maggie is the author of David and Rusty's Pirate Adventures, an exciting tale that transports David and Rusty, his faithful teddy bear, through a hidden door and onto a pirate ship where they actually meet up with a real pirate. Yeah. He has also authored Tangled Words, a poetic song of praise, and also The Ketchup Bottle and the Takeover, an amusing though strangely serious story about a ketchup bottle's dilemma when it moves into a refrigerator occupied by items that try to figure out who this bottle is and what it wants. Another of Maggie's published picture books is Isabella and Penelope. It is a deeply emotional exploration of a young girl's need to use her imagination as a way to cope with her father's death. Maggie Grinnell lives in California with her cat, Jasmine, named after the princess in the story of Aladdin. Maggie, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's such a great pleasure to be talking with you today about your life as a writer. I always like to begin by asking an author, what do you remember about your experiences with books and reading during your childhood? And that is, if you do remember anything at all.
Well, my first time that I remember when my mom was giving me a bath, I was probably 3 years old, and it was actually a cloth book, and it teaches kids how to buckle belts and tie shoelaces. And I remember it had that texture with the belt and the shoelace. And it's hard for me at 3 to do that, but my goodness, I just thought this, cloth thing and turning over the pages was wonderful. And that was actually my first experience with the book. So that was, God. And then after that, I just couldn't wait to get my hands on a book, just to feel the texture of the book. That's why I don't like Kindle, because I love the texture and the smell of books. So that gets me very excited to turn the page physically. So that's my first memory of a book.
Oh, yeah. That's a beautiful memory. It's amazing to me how long it stays with us, and I find that out from other authors that sometimes that was the pivot that, got us thinking about books and making books. And so what about becoming a writer? When did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, gosh. I would say I've always had the imagination. It's been with me since I was little. Putting down a story probably was college, that I wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a veterinarian because I love animals. And in high school, I thought that's what I'm going to be. And I just want to do that. And then just one day I had a story and I thought maybe I should write this down, but I put to the side. And then in college, I really started to write down stories here and there. And then I really started to get into it because my imagination got a little bit more intense and these characters spoke to me. So I would say probably college is when I really knew I wanted to do writing, to be a writer.
Was there an emphasis in terms of like a particular teacher or instructor?
There was actually a nun. I went to a Catholic college in downtown Los Angeles. And she was very strict. She was the kind that would mark little red marks all over your paper. And I would get discouraged, like, oh gosh, I'm doing such a bad job. I just don't want to do this anymore. So I graduated, but my mom later told me that I was her best student. I said, wait a minute, what about the red marks all over the papers? And said she wanted me to keep writing. And she did not. She said I had a really good story. I just didn't know how to put together. So it was the structure of the story I did not know how to do. But I had it in my head. It's just getting down on paper and structuring it like beginning, middle, and end. So that kind of spoke to me. I did not know that. So yeah, now it's like writing is like in my blood, really. You know, I have ideas come to me all the time. I just have to put it down on paper.
That's right. Yeah. And
yeah.
It's always a challenge to follow the inspiration, you know, to get it.
Oh, it is.
I think also to trust ourselves and our confidence. You know, I mean, that's you know, I'm always challenged with that, I think, as a writer, is to, you know, and is to be sure that I can trust myself that, okay, I'm doing this and you know, this is the way it's working right now. It may not be the best, but it could be improved, etc. You know. So and then I say to you, but why writing? What's the attraction? Why do you like the challenge?
You know, honestly, I don't feel like it's a challenge. I think most people will think, okay, I pick up a pen. Now I've got to think of the story and now I got to put down the paper. And then to me, I felt like once I wanted to be a writer, I felt like that was it. That was like, it was easy to take the pen and put it down to paper and just start writing out the story. So for me, I felt like inspiration, I feel like, is there around me. I think it's just now the what do you call it? The grabbing the pen and putting it down on paper. So writing is always in me. I just never felt like it was much of a challenge to get my words out. It was just putting it down on paper and getting it out there for everyone to see. That would probably be the biggest challenge, is getting my work out there. But I would say having the story is always with me, and I just need to take the time and write it down.
Wonderful to hear. Tangled Words is one of your recent books, and what an intriguing, even spiritual cover you chose to highlight the poetic images you use. I got a sense that you were capturing what seems to be a childhood experience. What did you set out to offer your readers in Tangled Words?
I wanted actually the title came to me because I think a lot of people can agree that when you think of words in your head, when they come out either on paper or through your mouth, it could be tangled. The words are different than what you want to say. And so that's how I came out with Tangled Words. I'm like, okay, wait, maybe that's not what I want to say, or that's not the version of how I want to say it. but I just wanted people to see me. Um, those are childhood experiences, things that I have seen in my head and things that I've seen through life. And so I just wanted everyone to get better understanding of me as a poet, as an author, as a person. And that's what I want everyone to look at when they look at that book.
Interesting. So in other words, it's something autobiographical.
Yes. Yes. So if they look at it, they will see bits and pieces of my life, and then they will see how my imagination works.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought, because it does reach into the imagination as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Yes.
stains it, by the way. In David and Rusty's pirate adventures, you surprise readers with an incident that gives David and Rusty, his teddy bear friend, a new sense of purpose. So, what is that surprise, and why did you include it in the development of that story, that intriguing story?
Well, with David, he was a, a boy that really didn't have any friends, actually didn't have any friends. And Rusty was his only friend. And to give up that only friend, I felt needed to happen. He needed to feel like he didn't have to hold on to that friend. That friend will always be there for him. It's just that he's got to let his friend grow. And so to have him give up his teddy bear to the captain of the pirate ship, I know was hard for him. But he knew the captain needed it more at that time. I'm actually writing a sequel to it
Oh,
where 10 years later, the house is going to be sold. So he goes back through the closet and to say goodbye to Rusty actually again, because this is it. But the captain's son comes back. And so Captain gives Rusty back to David. So they're reunited after 10 years. And then
oh,
they go back through the closet door and they continue on with their lives together. So that's actually the sequel I'm writing. It all ends good.
yeah. Well, I wish you luck. Seriously, it
Thank
sounds
you.
wonderful. It sounds wonderful. What about the ketchup bottle in the takeover? I found that so amusing, and then I kept thinking about the ketchup bottle having a kind of identity crisis. I mean, the poor guy or poor bottle. So, what do you hope kids will gain from reading this short story or having it read to them?
Well, first I got the idea from there was a friend's refrigerator that had a huge ketchup ball took like over the side of the refrigerator. Nothing else fit. I thought, dear Lord, where did you find this bottle? It was like 64 ounces. What? I mean, if I had a camera, I would have taken a picture, but I didn't. Um, and I thought, what happens if that ketchup bottle had an ego and decide, you know what, I'm going to own this refrigerator. So let's go. So when I started to think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, where's the story going to go? And I realized that you cannot have an ego. You got to let everybody. He wasn't letting anyone in. The ketchup bottle just wanted it for himself because he was used to being by himself. And so when others wanted to come in and help him, he didn't want that. He pushed them away. So I want kids and parents to read the book and feel like they should accept others for what they are. And if someone is trying to help you, don't push them away. And so the ending is where Tommy Tomato, which is the name of the ketchup bottle, is where he gets lost at a picnic. And he comes back half full. But he is better half full than he was full. So he has this, it's just all these friends accept him for who he is now because he's half full. So he's not feeling like he's all that great, but they think he's great. He's better than he was before. So I want them to feel that just be yourself and just let others in. It's okay.
It's
So
okay.
that's
Yeah.
what I want them to get.
That's not, no, that's good. I mean, I think that, bringing that in as far as acceptance of others, I mean, that's such an important
Hmm.
topic is to consider. Let's turn to Isabella and Penelope, um, your picture book, which one of your reviewers describes as a story about a young girl's imagination helping her to cope with her father's passing. While preparing for our interview, I learned that this story, this heartfelt story, is very close to you personally.
Mhm. It
How, how
is.
close is it?
Uh, my dad developed Alzheimer's and he was put into a home, and uh, I saw him 4 days before he died. He actually went into a coma. Um, so his eyes were not open, but he knew who I was. So to get to spend time with him 4 days before he passed was something that still did not make it any easier when he passed. And when I got back to writing, which is 2 years later, because just like Isabella, I shut down for 2 years. I did not write at all because my dad was my inspiration for writing. And I thought, he's not here, I'm not going to write. So in my mind, I thought, what happens if a little girl had to experience her dad dying? So I had her dad dying in a plane crash on her birthday. And that was the love of her life, was her dad. And then she stopped speaking for 2 years. And I thought, how's she going to get her voice back? Well, because I have such a wild imagination, I was holding a cereal box, and I remember as a little kid, there used to be toys in there. And I thought, let's have a caterpillar. Let's have something unique. And let's have it pink because it's a girl. And then let's have it eat its way out of the garbage bag that was thrown into, and then crawl over to Isabella and then speak to her. So they understood each other. Even though Isabella wasn't speaking, Penelope can look at Isabella and have her gain that strength. But when Penelope turned into this beautiful butterfly, um, Isabella thought, oh, another person's going to leave me. But I read in Mexico is when there is someone that dies, a butterfly, all these butterflies come to a bridge and then they fly to heaven. And that's one day a year to celebrate the death of somebody.
Hmm.
So I incorporated that in my book. So all these butterflies kept landing on her windowsill, just to show that her dad is sending her lots of love from heaven. So that's when she knew she can open up. So she runs to her mom and speaks for the first time, saying, I love you, after 2 years, and just opens up. And so that's mine. Wasn't as grand when I got back to writing. I didn't have butterflies everywhere, but it just was a big opening that after 2 years I can actually write, and it was okay to do that.
Well, that's wonderful.
So I
No,
dedicated that. Yeah, I dedicated that book to my dad.
I saw that. And also just
Yeah.
I was so interested in the butterflies because the whole idea of them, developing, out of the, from the caterpillar, as it were, into
Hmm.
like it's like her own emergence. It's like Isabella's own emergence as she realizes that she can move on, and then
Hmm.
that scene where the butterflies are just dropping in and dropping out and dropping in, and it's really symphonic. It's very beautiful, to bring
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, no, it was very moving.
Oh,
A reader might say that Isabella and Penelope is a picture book about death and grieving, but that doesn't seem to describe the entire theme or themes. What other
yeah.
what do you want people to think about other than just the grieving and the death?
Um, it it's actually about a story about love. It's, if you look at it, it's the love between Isabel and her dad, even though you don't see the love, you feel it. And then Isabel and her mother at the very end of the book, that's about love. Then you got Isabella and Penelope, which is about love. So they're all these little stories about love, and how to accept that love. And each one is different. Isabella had to accept that her dad loved her even though he wasn't there. Her mom loved her and she was there. And Penelope loved her for a short time and had to leave. So there's this three different stories about love. So it's more about love than death and grieving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that certainly, it certainly is felt that way. As a reader, you certainly feel that way.
Mhm.
I was wondering a little bit about your process as a writer. As I say, writing a book takes a lot of time and energy, creativity, endurance, patience. So,
Oh,
what about your journey? What about your journey to publish? What is that
oh,
like?
wow. Well, publishing is very hard. Um, I never set out to publish. What happened was I um, saw this magazine that was specifically online, and I started writing articles about writing and submitting it once a month to them. They got new ownership from a small publishing company, and they liked my articles. And they said, "Do you write any stories?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can write a story." So I started writing stories, and it's just a man and his wife that own this publishing company. It was just them. They put together the books. They didn't have a big warehouse where they made books. They just did it themselves. So I was with them for all three of my books.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and uh, gosh, I would say don't set out to get published. Just set out to write down your words and they will get out there eventually. That, yeah,
That's a good
that
attitude.
was, yeah, that's how I see it is, mine was a stroke of luck, just writing for a magazine and having the new publisher just look at my work and saying, "Do you have anything else? Do you have any stories?" And so that's how I started my journey with my books.
And what is it? Can you mention the name of those people? I mean, the people that are supporting you.
Um, I can name the company, but the company is no longer there because actually the husband and wife went through a divorce, so they actually stopped the company.
Okay.
And Tangle Words is actually my first book through my new publishing company. So, but I felt privileged to be with them, and they were great. So,
Well, good to hear that. The good experience, because
thank you.
I think what, if you have a good experience with a publisher,
Mhm.
whether it's one of those big box companies, I mean, one of the major
Yeah.
traditional companies that I've worked with from time to time, or whether you're, going independently to a smaller company, when you get the endorsement, you feel encouraged, and sometimes I think it's a lot more difficult with the large companies because it's so competitive, and some of us authors, writers, shy away from the big companies because we know how difficult it is to be accepted.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What about, um I always like to ask, the advice that you might want to give a person who longs to be a published writer.
Oh gosh. I would say, again, do not think about being published. Um, think about think about if you're why if you want to write poems, let's say, um, just just write that down. It doesn't My poems don't rhyme at all. So I just go free verse. I feel that's more of me. But some other poems could be rhyming and other poets could like that. I would say just write for you. Just write for you, write the stories. You can tell your friends and maybe they'll tell some friends. But don't get discouraged if you don't get published. Um, I have a friend who's a writer and I'm actually very jealous of her because she is with a big publishing company. And um, she has got many books under them. So, but I have come to realize I am my own writer, and um, I I feel good about what I've written, and the stories are out there. So I would tell writers just to write for themselves, and they will get published one day, but just wait for it.
Hmm.
Just wait; it'll come along.
Well, that's good to
And
hear.
also, I would say if they can go out, well, now that we have this whole virus going on, before that, if they can go to writing conventions and they can connect with other writers, I've done that. I've been to Los Angeles and I've connected to other writers. If they can go to writer meetings wherever they can to meet other writers, that would help too. Go to book festivals, just get out there and then have a business card. I would have a website if you really want to promote yourself, and just kind of, you just really have to promote yourself as a writer. And you have to believe in yourself before anyone else will. So if you believe in yourself and you put yourself out there, you're definitely going to be seen.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned, being with other writers, and
Hmm.
it puts you, especially if you're sharing what you've been writing, because I mean, it puts you in a very vulnerable position. You have to learn how to accept their critique, and I don't want to say criticism, but let's say their response, and that's I've learned, I myself have learned so much from, and I miss it. I missed it once the virus set in and we stopped meeting. We were meeting every other week, and we always brought pages that we were working on, and I found this to be enormously helpful. And I think I'm so glad we're talking about this to so that other writers can hear, the
Hmm.
that kind of process, which is very important. And also on your website, you have a festival of books. I noticed.
Hmm.
What is that called? I can't remember.
It's the Orange County Children's Book Festival, and for poets and writers and illustrators. And I go to that once a year. It's in Orange County. It's a wonderful place to promote yourself as a writer. So once you have written a book, you just submit it to the festival and you fill out an application, and then they will find a booth for you to promote your writing. And there are like 10,000 people that show up, and these little kids will come over and they will look at the book if it's something that like Isabella is wonderful, because Isabella is this little girl. So little girls come over and look at the book, and then the parent will follow. So I would say that is a great place for writers. Even if you're not published, just go. Just go, and there'll be writers that can talk to them. And like if they approach me and I can give out my card and they can talk to me about advice on what to do. Um, and they can see my books. And so I think that'd be a great place to go. Even if they haven't submitted their book, they can just walk around and speak to other writers and
That's,
get inspiration that way.
yeah, very encouraging. I think I might want to put a plug in right here for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, a
Thank
CBWI,
you.
in California. I mean, they're in Los
Hmm.
Angeles, and they have regional affiliates.
Hmm.
There's one right here in North Ohio that I go to
Oh,
all the time because they do workshops, and they have a conference every year. Now, this particular year, or I should say 2020, it was virtual, but it's a very intriguing place to go to, because you as you say, you meet other writers, you can sit and talk, and they also offer some fantastic workshops, so I think people who are listening to us might want to look into scbwi.org
Yes.
in California.
Yes.
So I'm coming to the end of our conversation, and I think the big thing is for me to ask you about what you're working on. Well, you already told us you've got a sequel to that marvelous Dave and Rusty's Pirate Adventures, which I think is good. And then you were talking to me about your take on Snow White and and Prince Charming. I thought you really made me think about that. Do you want to talk about it a little bit? Because I think
well, I was thinking with I love fairy tales, and I was thinking, well, let's see if I can rewrite a fairy tale. So I chose Snow White, and so she gets attached to the seven dwarfs because they each have their own personality. So she meets Prince Charming, and then she marries him, and then she realizes that he has his charm, but that's it. She misses bashful and grumpy, and she misses all of their characteristics. I mean, you can't be charming 100% of the time. So that just kind of gets on her nerves. Like, oh my gosh, I want a little grumpiness. I want the bashful. I want that. And so she realized that's not it. She doesn't want that anymore. She felt like it was more real life being with them. So I had her leave and go back with them. I just don't know what the outcome will be. I mean, they'll be happy to see her, but I'm not sure how their life is going to be different when she goes back. But I had that idea of maybe Charming is not all he's cracked up to be.
That was so interesting. Too much charm can get to you. It's like,
yeah, really. That's all he's got is charming. My gosh, 100% of the time, and that's it.
Too much, No, I can imagine. I mean, when you were talking about it, I imagine her fleeing. She's gonna run away. And one day, whether she's gonna flee back to the doors. I just think that something. I hope you'll work on it. It could be very interesting. So let me tell our listeners, readers and writers, visit Maggie Grinnell's website. That's MaggieGrinnell. Of course, that'll come up in the interview posted. On her website, Maggie introduces you to her life as a writer. She introduces her hobbies and her interests. And thank you, Maggie. Thank you so much.
Sure.
For spending such precious time for us today. It's been a pleasure hearing about your life and also about your projects. I mean, I think I hope you carry on with your writing and are encouraged to write the sequel, and also to think about Prince Charming. I just can't wait to meet him. I mean, because he could be on the obnoxious scale.
Yeah.
So, well, Maggie, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. And
sure.
Life is busy, and there you are, and you've given a lot of your background and yourself. So carry on with your writing, and
thank you.
Stay in touch with me, okay? Because I'm sure we could, we can talk through some writing. It would be very interesting. So.
Oh yes, absolutely. I would love to keep in touch.
Okay, wonderful. Let's do that, and I will talk to you soon. You have a good evening, and I'll talk.
Oh, thank you.
Bye bye.
You too. Nice to meet you. Bye.
You too.